In this video, I'll show you how to change your oil in a 2011 Subaru Outback with the 2.5 liter 4-cylinder engine.
So everything you'll need to do this job, you'll need a new crush gasket for the drain plug, new oil filter, 65 to 67 millimeter oil filter wrench with an extension and a ratchet, 14 millimeter wrench, torque wrench with a 14 millimeter socket, drain pan, funnel for the oil, 4 quarts of your favorite oil, 4.2 to be exact, so you probably want to get 5, and towels. Just so you know exactly what parts to get, there's the part number for the OEM crush gasket for the drain plug, and there's the part number for the OEM oil filter. First, pop the hood. Loosen the oil fill cap so it'll drain. Next, locate the drain plug for the oil pan. It's right in between the exhaust up here and the sway bar, and it's 14 millimeter. And start loosening it. Bring in your drain pan underneath and continue to loosen it. When you take this off, make sure you don't forget the crush gasket on here. When you get the drain plug off, make sure you don't forget to take off this crush washer. There we go. Make sure you don't leave that on there. You don't really need to let it drain all the way out at this point for a long period of time, because more is going to come out when you take the oil filter off. And then you can take the drain plug and put it back in just without the washer this time. Put a new washer on when we actually install it for good. Next, locate the oil filter, which is right in the exhaust right up here. And get it out either with a wrench or with your hands, depending on how tight it is. Again, get your catch pan underneath. As you loosen it, it'll start dripping. And once it gets loose enough, you can take, if you're using a socket, you can take the socket off. Start doing it by hand. And loosen it to where it's dripping. And then I just like to let it drip a little bit, so that I can get it the rest of the way without making a total mess. Now it's slowed down a bit. This filter is especially bad because it's right up in there in the exhaust. So to try to avoid getting it all over the exhaust, the oil, I try to kind of wrap a towel around the filter as I'm unscrewing it the last little bit. So hopefully that kind of absorbs any oil that happens to drip down the sides. Get the last little bit. Dispose of the old oil filter. Inspect and kind of clean up the mating surface of the oil filter. Make sure it's nice and smooth and there's no old gasket still on it. Looks good. And then kind of try to clean up the exhaust as much as possible where the oil was dripping, so that you don't get nasty burnt oil smell when you start it up. Next, we can return the drain pan to underneath the drain plug. And we can let the last little bits of the oil out now that we have the filter removed. Now I'm going to get my brand spanking new crush washer and put it on the drain plug. I don't know that it matters so much, but I prefer to put the flat side towards the drain plug, just because it seems like that is going to be flatter than the bottom of the oil pan, which may have some curvature in it. So the crush part of that will take up any variance. I've let this drip for maybe 5 minutes or so. So I'm just going to come in here and clean off the area as much as possible. And then install our new drain plug with crush washer. This gets torqued down to 30 foot-pounds. Next, we're going to unwrap our oil filter and pour a little bit of oil in it. Also make sure to get the gasket a little bit wet. I'm gonna carefully, so I don't spill any oil, get my filter back up on there, get it started. The spec on this filter is 7/8 of a turn past contact between the gasket and the engine. So what I like to do is kind of go really slow and try to feel when it grabs. So it just grabbed. So I know I just contacted the gasket, so I look at, you know, like a direction of something on the filter. And so if this is a full turn to where it looks like this, then 7/8 of a turn is going to have engine, the word engine, pointing like somewhere over here. So usually I can get that by hand. I think that's good. The stated oil capacity for a fill including filter change is 4.2 quarts. So I usually like to put in somewhere between 3 and 4 quarts to start out with, and then run it and top it off from there. So I'm starting out with a half full quart, so I'll put that in plus about 3 full quarts to get somewhere in the neighborhood. While you're doing this, it's probably a good idea to look under the car once or twice just to make sure there's no leaks. Let it sit a couple minutes and then take a dipstick reading. Just to make sure you're in the correct neighborhood and that there is some oil in the pan. Put the cap back on, get ready to start it up. You can leave the hood open for now. Next, start it up and make sure you don't have any leaks.